Now, Ollie introduced me as Rob Cuesta, but there are certain circles in which I'm known as, there you go, as the Rob Cuesta. Now let me explain. My journey to writing and publishing started sometime around 2010. I was running a workshop just like this, a 2-day event. And at the end of it, somebody came up to me and said, you know what, that was really good. You should write a book. After all, that's what experts do. And that phrase struck me because when you think about it, how do we say that someone is the expert in their field? We say they literally wrote the book.
Yeah.
So it's true. So I took that to heart. I went away, and over the next few months, I produced first one book, More Class, More Money, More Fun, and then a second book called Secrets of a Six-Figure Expert. And when I came to Canada in 2014, one of the things that you have to do when you first change countries, obviously, is you need somewhere to live. So I was putting calls out to realtors, and one day my wife and I were at the Eden Center, and the phone rang, and I picked it up. Hello, and it was one of the realtors. And we had a conversation about a couple of properties. And at the end of the call, he went quiet. And he said, can I ask you a question? So sure, I said, are you the Rob Cuesta? Now, who here has done any sales training? At that sales training, were you told the sweetest sound in any person's ears is the sound of their own name? Yeah. Well, I can tell you one thing. It is 1,000 times sweeter when somebody puts the in front of your name. Here's how it happened. Back in 2011, I was in Toronto running some workshops here and in Montreal. And one of his colleagues came to the workshop, picked up a copy of this. She went back to the office, read it, and at the end of it, she went up to him and said, you've got to read this book. You've got to read this book. This guy knows what he's talking about. Now think about that for a moment. If that had been a business card, one, what would she have done after reading the business card? She'd have done what everybody else does. It would have gone straight in the trash. She wouldn't have given it to him. Because nobody ever goes, oh my God, you've got to read this business card. It's really white. Or the fonts are fantastic. But it was a book. So she passed it on. And if it had been a business card, 3 years later in a completely different context, there isn't a snowflake's chance in hell that he'd have remembered my name and connected the two pieces together. So that's one of the values of having a book. And so this presentation, I'm calling it No More Excuses, Build Your Brand, Create Buzz, Monetize Your Advice, and Market Yourself Better by writing a book in the next 30 days. So basically, Ollie asked me to put together a presentation in which I'm going to kind of draw back the curtain on what we do with our clients and show you the 6-step process that we work through with our clients, on the basis that you can apply exactly the same techniques in yourself, sitting at your desk and work out how to write your own book. So, first thing to point out, this is how I grow my own business. It's not something I watched a YouTube video about. It's not something that I saw a blog post about. It's how I build my own. There's 7 of my books. Last time I counted, I think I was on about number 12. It's also how we help our clients to grow their business. That's a selection of some of the books that we've helped our clients to create over the last few years, and it's just a small selection. So, out of curiosity, how many of you struggle to stand out from your competitors? Because you are pretty much the same as your competitors. And how many of you hate selling? Yeah? Who here thinks that there's just too much to do in marketing? Everybody in this room should do, because that's why you're here, because there is too much to do, and Ollie's taking most of that away from you. Who is here because they can't get enough leads, and because you can't turn enough of those leads into customers, and finally, because you feel that for whatever reason you can't charge the fees that you ought to, that reflect the value of what you do. But whichever of those you put your hand up to, writing a book is the solution to it, because what you have to do is turn what you know into a book, launch it to turn it into a bestseller, and then you build your marketing campaigns around having that book, because you position yourself as an authority. So, Right. What I'm going to be covering then is why every business owner should have a business book, how to write it even if you're not a writer, if you don't have the time, or if you failed English at school, and how to publish a book and make money from it. Is that a good use of the next hour or so of our time?
Yes.
Brilliant. Before we go any further, I know people want to take photographs of the slides. Let's make it easy for you. If you want, you can download a copy of the slides, and some of them you will want to download because there's a lot of information on them. So grab your mobile phone or your smartphone, start with a text message, and text Ollie to the number on the screen there, 647-691-3727. When you do that, you'll get a couple of text exchanges. This is exactly the kind of thing you should be doing when you give presentations and when you're in front of an audience, or when you're in front of anybody who needs your information. You'll get a copy of the slides, also some additional resources that I'm going to talk about during this presentation. If you don't get a chance to do it now, I'll give you the same number and the keyword at a couple of places. So, just a moment, I should have put it on the next slide so I could advance through the slides. So, again, if you're going to do this with your audiences, repeat the number and the keyword on the next 4 or 5 slides. Everybody object if I move forwards? Take a photograph of the screen. As I say, it will come up a couple more times. So why are books so important? Well, go back a few years, and the basis of business was a battle for market share. We had to get customers to spend money with us and not with our competitors. And that was great when customers didn't have access to all the information there is about what competitors were in the market and what products there were and what alternative solutions. But now, because of the internet and technology, when they're considering you, they're considering every other alternative in the world. And so the only way we can battle that is for them not to have attention to give to our competitors. So business has stopped being about market share and it started being about mind share. It's a battle for attention. If you can get your customers thinking about you, then they're not thinking about your competitors. Because the reality is choices are infinite and attention isn't. So that's what we've got to get hold of. And for that purpose, I love books because, first of all, books are immersive. When someone's reading a book, they're in your world. They're in a world where you set the rules. You tell them what's happening. And you tell them what the solution to their problem is. They're not thinking about your competitors anymore. Their mind is your property. They're also engaging. As long as a book is well written, and we'll talk about that later in the presentation. But some people say, oh, nobody reads books anymore. No, people don't read crap books. But if you give somebody a good book, does anybody say, oh, I'm not going to read Harry Potter because it's more than 47 pages long? No. The books are engaging. You can get somebody to start at the beginning of your message and work their way through all the way to the end of the message. And finally, that was really hard to get rid of. It's easy to chuck away a business card. It's easy to chuck away a sales letter or a brochure. At home on my bookshelf, I've got a book from 1898. Somebody bought that book, passed it on. The person they gave it to read it, passed it on, read it, passed it on. And at some point in the 1970s, I picked it up at a school fair. Make that the 1980s. Yeah, at some point in the 1970s, I picked it up, and now, 2018, I've still got that book on my shelf. So, quick question. Imagine that you're looking for real estate here in Toronto. You're looking to buy a condo. Which of these people would you hire? Would you hire the realtor whose face you sat on while waiting for the bus? Or the realtor who smiled at you as you threw away your empty Tim's cup? Or would you hire the realtor who wrote the book, Everything You Need to Know About Buying Real Estate in Toronto? The guy who literally wrote the book on real estate, absolutely. I know which of those three I would hire. Because the reality is, you're either the expert who wrote the book, or you're whatever, you're an accountant, you're a lawyer, a business consultant. And when you're a business consultant and they're comparing you to every other business consultant, there's only one criteria they can use to choose you, and that's price, which is not a battle you want to win. I'm happy to lose out to competitors on price every day of the week. So, books really help you in sales as well. A few years ago, I went along to what I like to call the world's shortest salespeople. I was called up by a company and they said, could you come in and talk to us? And I said, no. And as I walked in, I noticed that everybody had a copy of that on their desk. Secret was a six-figure expert. The CEO had bought a copy for every member of the board, made them read it in advance of the meeting. So I thought, that's a good thing. It got better because as I sat down and we started the meeting, the CEO said, we want you to turn us into the natural experts in our business. Now, the natural expert is a term I created and I put in this book. It's the person everybody wants to hire, however much it costs and whatever it takes. So there's only one person in the world who can turn them into the natural expert in their field. That's the person who invented the concept. So at that moment I realized, that's wrong actually. It wasn't the world's shortest sales meeting. I wasn't in a sales meeting. I was in a kickoff meeting. And the first item on the agenda was, what's the fee going to be? As it happened, this was the client that I was talking to that day, a guy called Frank Butler. Runs a company called Chef in a Box. They make high-end, pre-packaged meals for the hotel industry in the UK. And we wrote this book, Wake Up to the Great British Breakfast Scandal. As you can see, it is not War and Peace. These are designed to be read in a break, in a lunchtime, on a commute, on your way to a sales meeting. And we got to create what I didn't realize at the time was going to be called a Dream 100 campaign. That's what Russell Brunson calls it. You pick your top 100 prospects, the customers you really love to work with, and you communicate with them. And in this case, what I said to him was, pick 50 executives at top hotel chains, and write down a list of those, and then pick 100 general managers and operations directors at individual hotels within those chains. We sent them a campaign that started off with the book. Now, a couple of days after the book went out, Frank got an email from one of the gatekeepers. Really sorry, you sent this to the wrong person. My boss isn't the person responsible for this. But I've forwarded it to them. Here's their name. Give them a call next week. They're expecting your call. Would that have happened with a brochure? Would it have happened with a sales letter? No. Another thing happened. They had a prospect they'd been chasing for 3 years. They couldn't get through to them. They couldn't get a phone call back. They couldn't get an answer to letters, answer to email. They couldn't get a meeting with them. A week after the book went out, they get a letter back saying, we read your book, we need to talk. Out of the other 50 of those executives at major chains, they got another 6 leads, including that one, that between them were worth $1 million. From the other mailing of 100, they got 39 sales meetings in the middle of summer, which is the busy period for hotels. Now, I don't know your business, I don't know what a customer's worth to you, but who here would make a lot of money if you could line up 39 sales meetings in the next few weeks? Hopefully everybody could. So, finally, they've been working with small mom-and-pop hotels that had 20, 15 rooms or whatever. Because they went to move to working with major hotel chains, what happened was the average client value went from $5,000 to $160,000 as a result of running that campaign. So, a book will open doors. Book also gets you media attention. That's some of our clients there. Chris Jones is an expert on dealing with flying phobia. When the BBC wanted to create a documentary about dealing with flying phobia, who did they call? The person who wrote the book. In the middle there is one of our local experts, Angela Sunis, who lives in Oakville. Now she runs a very successful podcast which is all about dealing with children with emotional issues. She's done 3 books with us. That 3rd book there, when it came out, she got a phone call from a documentary television company who said, we want to turn your books into a documentary. And the 3rd one there is Carolyn Swora, based in Burlington. A week after her book came out, she got a call from CBC. Somebody there said, we've got a project coming up. We'd like to talk to you about being involved in it. So books get you media attention. They'll also get you on stage. That's me at the last GKIC Super Conference earlier this year. And that's me being interviewed on stage by Mike Kenny. Who knows Mike Kenny's here? Very big internet marketing. They're also big in publishing. That's one of his events, Publish for Profit. I was interviewed on his stage. As one of my clients, Vanessa, who I'll talk about in a moment, she has become a regular at legal conferences. And then that there is Dave Howlett, who some of you may even have seen as well, because he's based here, he's in Oakville and he does a lot of work around this area. He was having trouble breaking into the North American market. Because every time he contacted an event organizer or a company down there, the first question they asked is, have you got a book? Can you send us a link to it? So he didn't. So then we helped him to create his book. As a result of that, he started working with GM down in Detroit. He also got more clients here in Canada. He got booked by Rogers to do a culture change workshop for them. So his book has been successful. Who here would like to start major global conflict? Now, this is not one of our clients. Trump's economic advisor is a guy called Pete Navarro. He got the job because Jared Kushner did a search on Amazon for experts on doing trade with China. He is the person who started the trade war with China, Europe, Canada, pretty much the rest of the world. So if you've ever wanted to start geopolitical conflict, write a book. So if writing a book is so great, why doesn't everybody do it? Well, there's four reasons that people typically come up with when I speak to them. And the first one is, I don't know enough, which really means I don't know how to explain succinctly to a client what I do. Everybody knows enough about their business, otherwise they wouldn't be in business. But it's expressing that sometimes it's a problem. So the solution in the case of Vanessa was to turn what she does into a model or a framework. In her case, we turned it into a little 3-step formula that she shares with her clients that covers the elements of how to have a conversation around raising fees. That made it a lot easier to talk to people. The second one is I don't have enough time. Now, Colin Mills, this one is a little bit longer. Colin Mills runs a company that's got 750 consultants in 15 countries spread around 4 continents. So he spends an awful lot of his time on planes and in lounges and things. So for him the key was planning. When you do your book, aim to spend about 1/3 of the time planning up front. That's how much of the time we spend with our clients. Because the reason it takes so long to write a book for most people is they sit down in front of a blank screen and they think, what am I going to write about? I don't know what to write about. Oh, I haven't got time for this, and they walk away. And then it turns into a 2-year battle. Whereas what you do is you sit down and plan it, and I'll explain to you exactly the planning process you should be using and what you should put in each chapter. And then that makes it a lot easier. The third one is, I'm not a good enough writer. Karen and Evan are actually based in Guelph. And they were both in special ed classes for English at school. However, they didn't write their book. They spoke their book. And in fact, every book that you've seen so far was spoken by the client, not written by the client. Because what you do is you speak the content and record it, and then either you rewrite it or you get somebody who can to rewrite it for you. So that's how they were able to become best-selling authors as well. Number 4, no one reads books anymore. Who's heard that? As I said, one, it's not true because people read good books. But secondly, print book sales have been rising year on year. 2014 they rose, 2015 they rose, 2016. We haven't got the numbers for 2017, but I'm expecting it to have gone up in that year as well. Amazon ebook sales grow at 4% per annum. So where does this myth come from that people aren't reading books? It's the big publishers, because their books are struggling. Self-published and independently published books are what's driving the growth in the industry. People like you and me. And the fastest growing category in all of that, luckily for us, is adult nonfiction, which is what all of us would be writing in. So the solution to getting people to buy your books is to run a book launch. This is the book we did with Bill Glazer. 6,215 copies of the book sold in a few weeks, in a world in which apparently nobody buys books anymore. And the big thing about this is he wanted to donate the money to charity, which is why you won't find it on Amazon, because Amazon takes a retailer's cut. So it was only sold privately. So we sold 6,215 books without the world's largest bookseller on our side. And he's already starting on his second book. As a result of it, he was able to donate $114,000 to a stroke charity. It's a very good achievement. So, what should you write about? There's a model I share with my clients that I call the knowledge check, which starts with information. Now, the problem with information is the world is awash with it. All you've got to do is go to Google, and it'll churn out and vomit tons of information at you. And everybody has access to that information. Which means if you write a book based on information, 1, it's not going to be very interesting. 2, it's going to be the same as what anybody else could have written. And 3, no one's going to want to read it. And that's the problem. A lot of the time you'll hear, oh, ghost-written books are terrible. No, ghost-written books are terrible when they're written by people who are just going on the internet, downloading some articles and turning it into a book. But if you use what's in your head, for a start, knowledge comes from remembering part of that information. Now, we all did the same stuff pretty much at school, but you remember different things from what your classmates did, and they remember different things from what you remembered. So, by starting to look at knowledge, we're already getting a little bit different. But again, people tend to remember kind of the same stuff, particularly the key pieces. But what happens when we apply that knowledge and we start to get experience? Well, 2 people can apply exactly the same knowledge, and they can have a different experience, even if they're in the same room at the time. So our experience starts to get a little bit more personal. But then, when we reflect on that experience, and we start to develop our own personal insights, that's when we're getting truly unique. And then when you go, oh, wait a minute, I did that over there and that happened. I did that over there and that happened. How do I make sense of both of those things? And that's the point at which we're creating wisdom. And there is absolutely nobody in the world who can create the same connections that you make. That's what makes you an expert at what you do. So if you focus on those 3 when you're thinking about what to put in your book, you'll create something truly unique and transformative for your clients. So how do you get all of that knowledge, experience, insight, and wisdom out of your head? Here are the 6 steps that you're going to go through. The first step is targeting, which is really a form of planning. And it's how is my book going to fit into my business model? How's it going to help my clients, and how's it going to help me? Because ultimately, you want to make money from this. So we've got a set of questions to answer. As I said, the details of how to download these are there, because I'm not going to go through all of these, but there's 9 questions. I've highlighted 3 there. What's their problem? What story did they tell themselves about that problem, and why would they read your book? Notice I've put an underline and I've bolded the W, because most people are much happier to answer why should they read my book, and tell people all the reasons why they should be reading it even though they don't want to. It's your job to make people want to read your book. And that's what we call the hook. So those are the three critical questions for making a book that somebody wants to actually read. So the second step is the actual planning. Now in fiction, there's a fight between what are called the plotters and the pantsers. Plotters say you write down everything that's going to happen in your book before you even start to write. Pantsers say, no, you sit down on your computer and you fly by the seat of your pants. In non-fiction, you cannot do the pantsing, because if you do, the book you write will be pantsed. It'll be horrible. So we've got to do the plotting approach. We've got to sit down and plan everything out. So it starts with, how long should my book be? Should it be a 60 to 80 page book, which is basically a big business card, which is great for sending cold to people who've never heard of you? Because someone who's never heard of you isn't going to sit down and read 400 pages. So they will read 50, 60 pages. And so that's a great way of introducing what you do, overcoming the big objections. The second size is the sales meeting in a box, which is kind of this kind of size, about 120 pages. Now that's a great one for sending to somebody in advance of a sales meeting. They already have some ideas, but now you can cut out a lot of the questions that you would get in a sales meeting, and a lot of the objections, by handing them the answers before the meeting starts. And of course, finally, you've got the big books, the signature book, and we do these for one very simple reason. It may never get read. And you know what? It doesn't matter if it never gets read, because it's the fact that it makes an almighty thud when it lands on the desk that matters to people. This book says these people have some really good ideas. This book says these people really understand their market and they understand their field. It also helps that a typical client for a book like this, for Colin's company, a typical client is worth $113,000. So it's worth delivering something a little bit meatier to them. So one of the easiest that you can do, this is, if I was writing this on my own, what I would write is this kind of size of book. And you can create what's called a 10 by 10 by 4. That's something I swiped and deployed from my picnics. And it is 10 frequently asked questions. Because the questions that people keep asking you over and over again are really just the objections. The 10 should ask questions, the questions you just wish people would ask you. Because they're the ones that if you were able to answer them, you'd be able to explain to them why they should hire you over and above anybody else. So that's about depositioning your competitors. And then the 4 are your hook, which if you remember was one of the first things we talked about in the first stage, in the targeting stage. Your story, which is why you're the person to write this book. And then the conclusion and the calls to action. Those are the 24 chapters. You don't have to do 10 FAQs and 10 SAQs. You can do any number you like. But you have those 4 bits over and above whatever content you're creating. So what kind of questions would you answer? Well, for example, a dentist might answer the question, do I really need to see a dentist twice a year? It's one of the questions they probably get all the time. Like people with really bad teeth. A realtor might answer, how do I maximize the value of my home? Or, why should I pay you a percentage of the sales value of my house when I can go online and pay $500 to a company that'll mail me a sign to put up outside the door? A business coach might answer, how do I scale my business without going bust or crazy? Now that's an interesting one, because that could be one chapter in a book this size, or it could be an entire 240, 280 page book, depending on the length and the amount of detail that you're going to go into. Which is why the first thing you decide is how long a book am I actually ending for. So how do you plan the middle chapter content? I'm not going to go through all of those points. That's why you can download the slides. But the main point is, we're taking them through what an NLP model is: why, what, how, what if. Why do I need to understand this? What is it I need to understand? How do I implement it? And what happens when I do that? And then we top it and tail with things like takeaways and reflective questions. Remember yesterday we talked about problem, agitate, solution? That's your agitation. You force the reader to think about what you just told them. and think about how terrible their life is, how bad their relationship is, how awful their business is, whatever it is that you're trying to convince them is crap in their life and they need to hire you to fix. And you back it up with stuff like diagrams and statistics and stories. Stories sell, facts tell. So we tell loads of stories. We put in images and cartoons and quotes and case studies and exercises. That's how you back up what you've written as the main content, or what you're going to talk about as the main content. Then you need to get people to take the next step. So we put in calls to action. Now, that's the call to action from one of my books, Authorities. I have this debate with clients all the time. It's a variation on my business is different. What I get is, oh, my readers aren't going to respond to a call to action. My readers will be put off by it. No, people don't respond to irrelevant calls to action. If your only call to action is, oh, to hire us today, call this number, they're not going to answer. But what we use is a thing I call chapter upgrades, based on the idea of content upgrades. So what you do is you think, okay, so is there a resource that I could give them that backs up this information? A worksheet, an infographic, a set of exercises or questions? Is there something that I can add that when somebody reads it, they go, I'm interested in this, they'll go, oh, and there's some more resources that I can get, I'll get that. And that's critical for two reasons. First of all, if you give your book to somebody, you've got two options. You either call them up a week later to find out whether they were interested, or they get in touch with you to tell you they were interested. Which of those positions you more strongly? Them coming to you. So if you've got those calls to action in the book, they're saying, hey, I really enjoyed that book, I really liked it, and I need to know more. Versus, hello, did you read my book? Oh, you didn't? Okay, I'll call you back next week. And the other reason is, if somebody buys it on Amazon, Amazon doesn't tell you who bought your book. There's only one way you're going to find out who read your book, and that is by asking them to do something in exchange. So you've got to put these calls to action in your book. And notice that in this case, it's got a big box around it. Copywriters call it a Johnson box. So people spot them, because then later when they're reading, oh, there was something in that book I wanted to do, where is it? If they're reading through and they can't find it, then you've lost your chance to get them to do anything. If it's a big bold box, then they'll find it again. So now that we've planned our book and we know what we're going to talk about, we're going to perform it. Not write it, but perform it. You don't need to be Einstein to write a book anymore. You don't need to be Shakespeare. I know Shakespeare's a playwright, but if I put up a photo of Ernest Hemingway, nobody would have recognized him, apart from the fact that, of course, Kevin mentioned who he was in the previous presentation. But the whole point is, we just record ourselves talking, so that you can either get somebody else to interview you, or you can interview yourself. You give them the guide, the outline that you created in the previous step, and you say, could you ask me questions about this? And they go through. And then, now that you know what you've talked about as the main content, that's the point at which you go back and you fill in the intro. What was my hope? Why did I write this book? My mission? My hero story? Who are you and why should they listen to you? And then the path. How's the book structured? Which, of course, in most cases is actually going to be how you get from current state to desired state. And then you top it off by planning your conclusion, which is going to have your TTWYTT. Any guesses what that might stand for? Tell them what you told them. TTWTBN, tell them what to do next. And finally, how can they work with you? That's the point at the end at which you put in the call to action that says, now that you've read this, if you're ready to hire us, call this number or do whatever it is you need to do. But in between, you've given them as many as 20 opportunities. Because if you've got chapter upgrades, nobody minds requesting a separate resource for each of the chapters. Where they get fed up is if at the end of every chapter it says, call us, call us, call us. So then you speak your book and you get it transcribed. Please, please, please do not go on Fiverr and pay somebody $5 to transcribe your book. Because all they're doing is they're putting it into a piece of software. And you can get some quite comical transcriptions that way. I wish I'd thought of it when I was putting it together. I would have given you some examples. But I've often found myself looking back at something and thinking, I have no idea what I would have been saying at that point. And then I have to go back and listen to the recording in order to figure out what it was. So, there's a service called rev.com. When you upload your file, the first question they ask you is, what accent is the speaker or the main speaker? Because then they go, okay, so this is primarily North American. We'll use a transcript, a real human in North America. Oh, this is an Australian or a Kiwi accent. We'll use somewhere in Australia or New Zealand. It's a European accent. We'll find somebody in Europe. It's $1 a minute, which is more, but you spend a lot less time clearing it up. And the folks at rev.com have actually got a $10 voucher, which you can get from that link there, brightflamebooks.com/rev. That's long enough to put a little test on and see how good the transcription is. So it takes the risk out of trying. When you do it, you'll realize actually, yeah, it's worth spending that little bit more. You know, if it's a 60-page book, it's probably going to be 60 minutes of text. $60 to get it transcribed, and you don't have to spend the next 4 weeks figuring out what you said. So, we have targeted, we planned it, we performed it, now we're going to polish it and turn it into something. Let's get the elephant in the room out of the way. The fantastic thing is, Amazon has made it possible for everybody to become an author. The really terrible thing is, Amazon has made it possible for everybody to become an author. And the reality is there are a lot of books on Amazon that are what I lovingly refer to as steaming elephant turds. Because they're not well written, they're not well edited, they're not well formatted, and they look like an elephant turd. So, what we have to do is make your book appeal to a popular reader. So you need it edited, you need it formatted, you need a good title and subtitle that's going to make people want to read it, it's like the headline, and you need a good cover for it. We don't speak the way that we write. We don't write the way we speak. Some people do, but not many. When we're doing a presentation or when we're talking about stuff, we'll start down the train of thought. And we might go back to finish it, or we might not. Or we might start a completely different train of thought. And so we need to have someone who can turn that spoken English into written English. And from that point, it's worth remembering your aunt is not an editor. Nor is your grade school teacher. And I picked those two examples because I've actually had people bring us manuscripts before and I say, oh, I don't need an editor. Because I got my grade school teacher, we stayed in touch for the last 20 years, and she's a really good editor. Also, your neighbor's niece who did a BA in Fine Arts is not an editor, not unless she's working as an editor for a media company. And Fiverr is not a marketplace for editors. If you're spending $20 to get a 100-page book transcribed, you're giving it to somebody who does not have English as their first language, and is going to introduce more errors than they take out for you. So, I don't care what it's doing. We do it for our class, but you don't have to use us. Use anybody, but just please pay a proper editor to edit your book after you finish. Even if you think, and here's the thing, even if you think you're a really good writer, they will find stuff that you didn't notice because if you would have noticed it, you wouldn't have said it in the first place. Formatting also matters. This was a client who brought us a book last year. She had it published by somebody else. And that was what they did on the left. And of course she said, well, I get comments back that it doesn't look very good. That's because it looks like it was typed up by a secretary using the default styles on Word. Which is probably exactly how that book was formatted. So we took it and reformatted it, as you can see. There's actually a call to action on that page. But you wouldn't know reading it, whereas there, hopefully that you think looks like something people might be a little bit more interested in reading. Remember we said that it's got to engage them. So formatting matters. And then your title. There's an awful lot of formulae for creating good titles, so I'm not going to give you all of them. I'll give you a resource in a minute. I'm going to talk through two particular formulae you can use. First of all, is making a big, bold promise. Like, the 4-hour work week, that's a big promise. Change your brain, change your body. Go from good to great. What to expect when you're expecting. They are big, bold promises. The other one you can use is to tell them what to do. You know, think and grow rich. Eat this, not that. It doesn't get much simpler for dietary advice than eat this, don't eat that. Act like a lady, think like a man. You tell them what you want them to do. So that's how you create powerful titles. Then of course you've also got to create the subtitle. Here's the way to think about it. It's a little bit like copyright. The main objective of the cover is to get people to read the title. The objective of the title is to get people to read the subtitle. And the main objective of the subtitle is to make them go, "Ooh, that's interesting, I wonder what it's about," and they turn it over. And it's the back page that then makes them go, "Oh, that looks interesting, I'll read the book." So it's like a little, take them step by step, give them little breadcrumbs to guide them on what you want to do. So you want to use a subtitle that's full of benefits. Remember, we planned actually, I didn't mention it, but in the targeting stage, one of the things we figure out is, what's the benefit to the reader of reading this book? And then it turns up in the subtitle. So, scale up, how to take your business to the next level without losing control and running out of cash is, how to take your business to the next level without losing control and running out of cash, a big benefit for a business owner who's trying to grow. I thought I'd amuse you with some examples of what happens when you don't write titles properly. For example, let's say you were creating a cookbook. You might not want to call it that. And you might want to think about how else the title might be interpreted. And not call your book stuff. I'm not sure what Christopher Hitchens was thinking when he wrote a book about Mother Teresa, or the missionary position. And I've never read Still Scrimping after 25 years. And there's old tractors and the men who love them. Now you might think that book wouldn't sell, but it sold well enough that it merited a follow-up, a sequel. Everything I know about women are done. Parenting books, you really ought to choose the title candidate. You may not be able to read that. It's Mommy Drinks Because You're Mad. And think about how your title and subtitle work together. And don't call your book How to Raise Your IQ by Eating Gifted Children. If you're an animal lover, you might want to, by the way, most of these problems would be solved if they did something that I tell everybody to do, which is, when you've got some ideas for your title, ask people you know what they think of it. Don't call your book A Passion for Donkeys, or this one, I think this is the worst of the lot. Actually, no, this one is. Okay, so how do we create an eye-catching cover without having really bad titles? Put yourself in the reader's shoes. Remember what's happening. They're browsing Amazon, they're standing in a bookshop, they're looking at the shelves. You want them to notice the book and want to pick it up. And avoid cliches. When one of the designs that came back for Scale Up had a ladder on it. Really? That's all the designer could think of? You want something that's going to avoid cliches and maybe even stir emotions. That just has basically 2 words and a sentence on it. But it makes people notice it because there's kind of an emotional journey that they go on just in those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 letters. And use a professional. Again, don't use 5 of the covers because you'll get some really bad covers back. If you're not spending $200 or $300 on a cover design, then you haven't got a proper professional designer doing the cover for you. Think about how else your pictures might be interpreted. And don't use an amateur to create your cover, otherwise you might end up with something that looks like that. Professionals get it wrong sometimes too. This on the face of it looks like a perfectly reasonable cover. What do you think might be wrong with it? It's just too much text on there. Remember I said the job of the front cover is to make you want to turn it over and read the back cover. Stuff like the list of who's in there, that belongs on the back cover, not on the front. So make it clear and make it simple. So, I've got two resources that if you've already texted Ollie to that number, you'll get them anyway. But it's a guide called Titles That Sell, which is 100 examples of titles that you can use to create your own title. And also covers that work, where I dismantled 20 good covers and go, here is why this cover works. Here's what they've done that's really good that you can model for yourself. So you can get both of those at the same time with that text. So, next stage is to actually publish it, to get the book out there. First, one of the questions I get from people is, do I really need to do a print edition, or can't I just do ebook? Everybody reads ebooks. That's great if all you're aiming for is to make 20 bucks a month on Amazon. But if what you're doing is sending it out to prospective clients, remember what we said. Unless you ship them a Kindle with it loaded up on it, it's not going to make that noise when it lands on their desk. So that's why you need to have print. By all means, have the ebook as well, because people will buy the ebook on Amazon that you wouldn't even know existed. But for the purposes of giving it to a prospect, you want it to be a print book. And then the question is, hardback or paperback? Again, it's about the thumb factor. You can actually take a small book like this and turn it into quite a substantial book by putting hardcovers on it. If you go down to chapters, you'll find that there are some actually quite small books that look a lot more substantial because they've been turned into a hardback. If you're going to do the hardback, you still also need the paperback. For example, a lot of our clients, what they do is they think about the value of the lead to them. How likely is this person to actually buy, and if they do buy, how much are they going to spend with us? Because if someone's quite likely to buy and they're going to spend 100 grand with you, it's worth spending $2 more and sending them a hardback. And that's quite often the difference it makes. We're talking about a difference of a couple of dollars per copy. And the hardback has hugely more perceived value than the paperback. So, publishing options. Go back a few years, there was one option. If you didn't have a publishing contract, you went to your local printer, you asked them to print some copies of your book. If you asked for one copy, they would charge you $40. And if you wanted to get the price per copy down to $2, $3, $4, you needed to fill your garage and your neighbors with books. I have a friend in the UK who took that approach. They did their book, gosh, I think it over 15 years ago. Certainly 5 years ago, he still had some copies left. He wasn't even in the same business anymore. What he was doing was he would hold a workshop and he'd say to people, oh, I've got a really good free gift for you. On your way out, take a copy of my book. Oh, and by the way, if you've got any friends, relatives, neighbors, just grab copies for them as well, please. It was painful. Then you got the other option, the other problem with that is, of course, you've got to learn how to do it all yourself. You've got to learn how to find the designers and everything else. Print on demand came along. So now I don't have to order 10,000 copies. I can order one copy. And that's transformed the industry because it is feasible now for somebody to actually create their own, say, I'm going to do a mailing next week to 10 prospects. I'll buy 10 copies of my book. And it doesn't matter whether you buy 10,000 or one copy or 10, the price per copy is the same. Then you get the self-publishing companies. They used to be called vanity publishers. And they'll say, yeah, we'll do it all for you. Here's a charge. Problem is, some of them can be pretty bad. Last year we had a client who brought us a book, came to us. She didn't bring us a book, she came to us and she said, I'm tied into a contract with this company. If you've ever searched on Google for self-publishing, you are probably now being retargeted by them and will be for quite a long time. If you ever download one of their lead magnets, you've probably had weekly calls from them saying, are you ready to do your book yet? She had a proper professional designer create a cover for her, and the publishing company mangled it and made it look horrible. She had quite specific instructions on what she wanted the inside to look like, and they made it look like a teenager's school project. So I sat down with her for a day, and we figured out how to extricate her from that contract. She ended up still having to leave $2,000 with them, but we got her out of it. She produced the book that she had in her mind all along. So be careful. And now there's a third variation of this, and that is the companies that will ring you up and say, have you considered, they'll find you on LinkedIn or on your website, they'll ring you up and they'll say, have you considered writing a book? Yes. We'll publish it for you. We don't charge you for it. Oh, that sounds good. And then when you go to sign up, they say, oh, by the way, you commit to buying 5,000, 10,000 copies in the next 12 months. So they put it as you commit to selling 5,000, 10,000. So you think, oh yeah, I'll do that. What they don't tell you is, if you only sell 100 copies, you're on the hook for the other 4,900. And they don't sell it to you at cost because that was how they were going to make their money back in the first place. So you don't get the cost price. They charge you a margin on top of it. And you've got the traditional publishers, where you basically say, here's my baby, take good care of it. And they put it through school and college and professional training, and you see it when it's a grown-up. You've got this full control, and by the time it comes out, it's probably out of date anyway. And then there's the hybrid publishers. That's what we class ourselves as, and we've got a few competitors as well. And the idea is that we do everything there, but without filling your garage with copies of books and things. And with the view of getting it out in a few months instead of a few years. So those are the options that you can think about. Is if you're doing a little 30-page book for lead generation or 40-page book, that's probably your best bet. You can put together, doing the cover design and all of that, and the design of the interior. That's your best bet because your upfront cost is minimal. Profiting from it. We've put all of this effort into creating this book. Now it's time to actually make some money. How do we do that? Well, it starts with a launch. Getting a book out there is a matter of building momentum. So, the bestseller really means a lot of copies of this book were sold in a very short space of time. Which is why momentum matters. So the first thing is you sell as many copies of your book as possible to your tribe. Remember, they already know who you are. You don't necessarily need to, you can use this as a way of re-engaging them, but you're not necessarily growing your audience by this. But then you say to them, oh, could you share my book with your contacts in your list? And now you've just acquired thousands, tens of thousands of new leads. And then you get influencers to help you promote the book. All of that takes time. So think about it as a 3-month project. So when you finish writing the book, give yourself a few months to actually launch it. And in that time, you're going to build the launch team, and you give them the resources they need to launch it. So you write the emails for them. If you want them to do social media posts, you write the social media posts for them. Because most of them are probably busy either doing their jobs or building their own business. They haven't got time to help you promote your book. So they will, you just make it easy for them. And then you've got to get out there and promote yourself. So that's what we call. And build buzz for the process. One thing I say to everybody is, so when you get the ideas for the title, create a Facebook post and say to people, I'm writing a book, I've got these 3 ideas, which do you think is best? When you get the cover designs, ask them for feedback on the cover designs. Say, which ones do you like, what do you like most about them? Because people will start to say, when are you publishing the book, when's it coming out, how can I get a copy? You start to build buzz. When we give clients the first draft of their manuscript, I say to them, print it out at home, spread it out over the floor, take a photograph and say how excited you are that the first draft of your book is ready. It's every opportunity. This is how we sold 6,215 copies of Bill's book and filled a live event. Remember Ollie was saying this morning about people getting excited about drawing funnels. There's 49 emails in there, 8 sales pages. We created about 16 social media posts and a few dozen emails that went into a swipe file. We have the page for people to join the launch team, emails that were sent out to tell them, okay, it's day 1 of the launch, now is the time to send out this bit of the launch materials we gave you. If you don't tell them when to do it, they won't do it. We also created this, which is, if you've looked for Bill's book on Amazon, this is what you found. The preview edition. That was sent out to everybody who we thought might be interested in joining the launch team, to get them excited. And don't wait for people to buy your book. There's a range of strategies that we use with our clients, but the three that seem to work best are, first of all, the Dream 100. As I say, was Russell Brunson. When I told Frank to do it, I didn't realize it had a name. Now I know it's the Dream 100. So that's how Frank got his results. For giving it away for free. But with Vanessa, what she does, she gives it away for free on her website as a download. She takes it to networking events, and she says at the end, if you're struggling to charge what you really want, then I've got this book, give me your business card and I'll give you a copy, and she throws her list down the road. She also goes on LinkedIn, identifies good, probably well qualified, from what they say on their profile and things. She does a bit of background research on them. She emails them and says, hey, I saw that you posted this on LinkedIn, or that you that there was this article in the press about you or whatever. I've got a book about this. Would you like a copy? Some people don't reply. Some people say no. Some people say yes. If they say yes, she sends them a copy and she follows up with it. And finally, there's free plus shipping. I would love to say that Russell Brunson is my client. He's not. I'm working on it, but he's not my client yet. But Russell actually sold 100,000 copies of his free book, Expert Secrets, by asking people to just pay the shipping cost. Now, the trick to making that work is the shipping cost actually covers the cost of printing and shipping the book. And every copy that he has given away or sold of that book has been worth up to $327,000, which is not bad for a free book, because there's a back end on everything. Which brings us to the final step, which is how do you profit from your back end? So, you can turn your book into an online or a live training. That's what we did with Bill's book. We turned it into a 2-day event. Then you record that event, and you can turn it into an info product. You could create a membership site or a subscription, like we were talking about earlier today, about using the content for that. Or do a high-ticket retreat. If you write a book on copywriting, you could say to people, you know what, come on this 2-day retreat. By the end of the 2 days, you'll have your entire website written, all your sales pages, all your sales letters, and you just have a team of copywriters at the back of the room churning out copy for you. You can use it as the basis of high-ticket coaching, consulting, and services. You can start a mastermind. Certification and licensing is an interesting one. So if your book sets out a unique process, you can then use it as the basis for certifying other people to use your books. And now you're selling copies that they sell to their clients. And you're being paid to certify them and to recertify them every year, 2 years, or whatever. Power Day or VIP Day is another powerful way. It's a way of getting a very high ticket fee for 1 day of your time. Because people are used to the idea of paying $2,000, $5,000, $10,000, $25,000 for a VIP day, where they work with you for 1 day to solve one very specific problem. You can do that based on the book. Then of course, there's done-for-you services. That book there, Secrets of a Six-Figure Expert, I used it to launch a $20,000 mastermind. And done-for-you services, we would create everything they needed to implement what was in the book. That was our business model back then. Oops, and finally, physical products. If you're in some kind of topic where there could be some kind of physical product, if it's a fitness book, can you sell them a piece of fitness equipment? If it's a health book, is there something physical that you can sell them? You can use that as the basis of profiting from the book. My final gift to you is a copy of this. Again, if you've already sent the text to that telephone number, you'll get a download. I actually have about a dozen copies. If you want a printed copy, come and show me the text and I'll just give you a copy of it. Okay, who would prefer the print book to the ebook? Yeah, you see, I told you. Right, and just in case, by the way, those books before I showed you before, people sometimes say, oh, those aren't real books. I've checked them all out on Amazon, they're real. And so is this one. Games you can play with your pussy. That is all I've got for you.
All right. So that one took me by surprise at the end.